Today in the podcast, we have Alan Peterson. Alan is Vice President of SBA Lending at CreditBench, powered by BayFirst Financial. And prior to this, he was a broker. And he's now been an SBA lender for just under a year and a half. And he's already established himself as one of the top producers in the industry with over $30 million of production last year. And he's on track to more than double that this year. And as if that wasn't enough, he was just tasked with managing the bank's Flash Cap program, which is their program for SBA loans $350K and under. So without further ado, here's Alan. So I have a feeling that once we debut this podcast, a star will be born.
I hope so. It's your world, Ray. I'm just trying to live in it.
You know, I had a couple cancellations this week. One, they gave me notice, so no harm, no foul. No, I have no ill will against that person. The other person, that's neither here nor there. Now, listen, so you commented on my, there was a little controversy on LinkedIn with me posting about that because, I really did think it was kind of messed up. And a lot of people seem to agree with me, but you commented. Remember what you commented on the post? That it's the reason why you're here, basically.
As you know, you have an audience and I'm constantly marketing. So I know that was going to get a lot of looks and I did it intentionally. I mean, I'm not lying. I've got quite a bit going right now. And I thought that, I wanted to kind of a little boast piece there on the Ranger audience because it's everybody in SBA,
You started in SBA a little over a year ago, had an incredible year last year, did about 30 million in production, and in the comment you say you're going to hit 70 million by Q3.
Yeah, that'll be approved, probably not close. I'll be at 50 by Q3 though. I think very confident.
Still crazy numbers, and I want to understand how in just slightly over a year you've been able to accomplish all that, because that's incredible, man. Congrats. But let's start from the beginning though. What's your background and how do you land into the SBA space?
Sure. I mean, my deal is essentially I was a broker. I was just a commercial loan broker of kind of all sorts and sizes, just trying to monetize any and every opportunity. I had some salespeople that worked directly under me, and I really enjoyed it. But I started, learning SBA that way, and it was rough. I honestly was a lousy broker. Looking back on it, I think that, I didn't realize how bad I was, in that I was sort of just packaging, doing a quick, this cash flow, shoot it out and hope to get a check in 3 to 4 months. You know what I mean? That's quite frankly, that's really what it was. But the thing about it was I went direct to consumer. I went to the customer. I had to find the opportunity. I was leaning on, bankers in my community, where I'm from in Northeastern Pennsylvania. My value add there was, hey, keep the deposit relationship, but let me fund your declines. And I sort of kind of built a little bit of that. I mean, I was self-taught on the SOP. I was Googling and YouTubing, Nagel screen grabs and stuff because, no one's teaching the stuff. You know what I mean? And that was kind of how I learned. Quite frankly, I think that's the secret to what I do. I mean, what we do, respectfully, is easy. This isn't a hard, it's difficult. It's challenging. There's a lot of steps. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of patience, but man, I've had harder gigs than someone bringing a complete package to me, asking me if we'll fund it or not. I mean, that's not from a point of arrogance. I hope you understand. It's I've just had it harder. I approach this position from a true place of gratitude. I remember sending out my these crap packages and having some guy that's now what I'm doing now, and he'd be like, dude, what are you talking about here? And I'm like, oh yeah, we just gotta, and I remember being like, this banker is probably, taking the afternoons off and playing golf and all this kind of stuff. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it was a perception I had that wasn't reality, because it takes a ton of work, man. I'm not saying it's easy, but what I am saying is there's harder gigs out there in my personal experience.
Yeah, because if you're a broker and you just had to knock on 100 doors to get that package to the banker, and then the banker kind of just says, nah, pass?
Dude, that's after I'm managing my own PPC. I'm cold calling. I've got an army of bartenders and like, commission only salespeople just banging the phones on a 1099, while I'm, I mean, it was a it was a really wild world when I look back on it sometimes. I had a lot of success. I did it for, almost 6 years. But yeah, like that was hard. And we'd do all that work and we'd grab all this stuff and we're getting tax returns and we think it's a good deal and nobody else does. And when nobody else does, we can't pay my bills, right? So we had to kind of learn quick what a real deal was. And that kind of parlayed into this year. And that's all about like protecting time.
Well, go back to what you just said about bartenders. What was that all about?
Well, I had some really just awesome people that would work with me. And the most success I had with loan originators were coincidentally just bartenders. They were people that were customer facing and kind of conversational. They were people that just wanted to, bang the phones and they weren't afraid to talk to people. And that was, in my opinion, that's a skill that can be brought out of people. But I have a hard time teaching it, right? I can bring it out of folks though. And the rest of it you can teach, but some of that you can understand. You're going to call 300 people in a day and 200 of them are going to tell you to get lost and then not bother you. That was the difference between people who succeeded and didn't.
We say that type of stuff all the time. I 100% agree with it. There's things that are much easier to teach, but our industry always seems to take the other approach where it's like we want people that know the SOP, who've been a BDO. If
Right.
you're a broker trying to get into the banker space, it's actually very hard for a bank
Man.
to give you a
Yeah.
chance. So how did you actually get into this side of it?
I got really, really lucky, to be honest. So I don't know how. I kind of hit the lottery. I moved to Tampa from northeastern Pennsylvania, where I'm from. I bounced around in my 20s. I, lived in New York and, whatever. I moved to Tampa for really no rhyme or reason. I was doing my own thing still, just by myself, solo, one man show. And I was approached by a headhunter. And a recruiter reached out to me and was like, hey, we want you to talk to a couple folks. And I talked to a couple and I ended up connecting ultimately with Tom Zernick, who gave me a shot, and very grateful for that. But I mean, I knew right away. I mean, I was really nervous because they're like, okay, we have this position, you can work out of our Tampa office, headquarters in St. Pete, which is 20 minutes away. If you don't know, this part of Florida that well, you can work with kind of some of the retail people, the conventional people, and there's teams in person. And you can ask a lot of questions and we'll teach you what you don't know. You just have to really get after it, and that was kind of my end of the deal. But yeah, getting in, I was nervous, right? I'll be honest. Like Tom offered me a position, I'm like, yeah. And in my head, I'm like, oh man, you're now what? 'Cause I was nervous,
We oddly have this same exact experience because Tom also gave me my first 7A job when I had zero 7A experience, and I also had no idea what was next looked like. But Tom's a legend. Did you meet Tom in person for that interview process?
Well, we talked on the phone, and he was just a really nice guy, And when we had lunch, he was there, as was our chief credit officer and our CEO and chief banking officer, and they all were there. And I was really nervous, okay, because I was going into the bank and my perception of what banking, like a bank was and who bankers were, my perception was, to be honest, rather rather out there. I was and as I was driving to this nice place we were meeting for lunch, I was becoming increasingly more nervous. I knew better than to be late, even though I was 2 minutes late for the call, which I apologize for. On that interview, I was like 15 minutes early, and I sit down, and I'm like sweating more than usual. I'm like just chugging waters, and I took my coat off. When the guys came in, they all kept their coats on when they were eating, and I remember it really vividly, like thinking in my head, because now I'm like talking while thinking, right? I'm like, is this going well? Is it not going well? Do I get a salad? I don't really like salad, but these guys seem to be ordering salads. All this weird stuff going through my head. And then once we actually started talking, all of that went away immediately. Like once we actually talked about what expectations were and what my experiences were, We just really clicked. But man, I'll never forget that lunch. Man, that was a really funny time. But after that, I asked them for the job. About halfway through, I was just sort of like, well, can I work with you guys? And then they're like, all right. Like, I mean, it was, and then the rest of the lunch we.
That's different. Asking for the job like halfway through the interview. I like that.
Well, it was going well, and I believe in closing at the peak of impulse, right? So I felt that I had built enough rapport. We disarmed it, or I wasn't wearing a coat; they were wearing a coat. Once I got over that mental hurdle, I realized that we'd have a really good partnership, and that they were going to give me the resources to grow in the places that I needed to grow the most. So I asked for the business. You gotta, you never get it if you don't ask.
I have a story. I'm going to save it actually, but basically, yeah. Sometimes you want to give the position to the person who wants it the most, and that in and of itself is, a good strategy when interviewing and hiring for a sales position. Were you working remote? This is like early 2020.
Right.
Are you in the office? Like, what's your first week like?
My first week was, so we had just opened a new banking center in Tampa. And before I went there, I went to St. Petersburg, and Mike Giasone from my team came up, and I shadowed him for a couple days, and I linked up with everybody on team. So most of our folks were still kind of working from home, but in like kind of our headquarters area, I went there for a few days, asked a lot of questions, and felt pretty comfortable. And then I just went right to the Tampa office, and I just started just hitting LinkedIn and calling contacts I had, and just trying to build a pipe like as soon as I could, and that was in the beginning. I was really nervous. I knew that I'd been able to sell before, and I'd been able to be very successful, but this was kind of a new animal. What was cool too about like our group, like my first loan that got approved was a gimme from Chris Hackney, who obviously Chris, and now he's a SVP, a regional sales manager who I report to now. But when I started, he was just a guy that'd been there for a while, really well respected. But he kind of reached out to me and was like, "Hey, here's some templates. Here's this. Here's that. Oh, by the way, here's a cash flowing deal that I don't have time for it because I'm busy." And that was actually my first approved loan, which is pretty cool,
Yeah.
And it was a lot like that too. Like my credit partners were like more so like I thought it was like good cop, bad cop, but it wasn't. It's like more collaborating. Like this is the box, and I figured the sooner I could figure out what the box is, the sooner I'd be able to hit it, and that's sort of like day one in the Tampa branch was me leaning on the people that have already been there and then just banging the phone,
Did you have like a plan going into like a 30, 60, 90 type plan?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I knew that I would, I mean, I guess a really full detailed plan. I don't know that I had that. But what I do know is that 2 weeks in, my fiance Jennifer was like, how's it going? And I said, I don't know. I'm not really sure. I'm talking to people, I'm making contacts, and it was all about building the pipe. But no, I mean, I didn't have a set, like in 30 days, you need to do this, 60 that, 90 that. It was more feeling out how I was going to drive business and what really worked for me. And then what the bank wanted, like I had to figure out what do they want to see? What kind of, and then find that.
What did a day look like when you have no pipeline and you're building a pipeline?
The day looks like just getting in early and staying late. I mean, last year I worked a real lot. And I still do, to be honest, because I actually really enjoy it. I was thinking a little bit too about, the BDO retreat that you did, and when one of the breakout sessions, when we were talking about like finding out like who you are and owning that, and if you're someone that really likes to work and whatever, just own that and embrace it. And if you're not, that's okay too, but I was literally just prospecting constantly. I pulled like the business journal, went to the book of lists, found every top producing commercial realty company, and I just started calling them. I called every CPA I could find. I hit LinkedIn by third by third degree connections only because I didn't want to step on toes of the senior guys because they were looking out for me. And I
Oh
didn't
wow.
want to, you know how that goes. I didn't want to rock the boat there. But, and also what I did is I reached out to a lot of guys in the alternative lending space that I had relationships with previously that, in my opinion, were leaving money on the table by not monetizing SBA opportunities. And my value add was give me a name and a number. I'll do all the work, and keep you in the loop. And a little bit of traction there.
So tell me, it's always interesting to hear just how deals originate. Like, can you think of like your last closing or an upcoming closing? Like, think of a deal and tell me how it originated.
The last deal that I had that closed it was a insurance agency. It was a local opportunity that came through a contact that I made through a commercial realtor like networking group that I kind of hugged close to. This was someone who'd been renting for a while, and we did the total finance CRE thing that we're doing. People are kind of into that right now. But that was the last one. That was my last closing, and I've got a few more. One was someone that really wanted to go USDA, and then realized that it wouldn't work, and we ended up going like 7A because the goodwill component, and I'm trying to master USDA as we speak, and it's whatever. It's tricky, but
How did you meet that borrower?
that borrower came to me. That came through a broker who I met at NACLB, who would not deal with First Home Bank or Bay First Financial, or let's let it out the name of where I work if we could, Ray. But it was a broker that I met at NACLB who did not want to do business with our group. He had a bad experience previously because he focuses on hospitality, and our appetite for hospitality. At the time, it wasn't what he thought it should be, which I get it, man. But if I can't help you, I can't help you. Like, let's stay friends. And what I told him was, I'm like, listen, just let me stay on your radar. Let me show you what I can do. And he'd send me some scenarios that I knew would and wouldn't work for us. Our box opened up significantly too, which was great. And I was like, hey, this is a restaurant deal. It's a cafe. A cafe acquisition of the real estate. And he's like, you guys won't touch a restaurant. I go, no, let me show you what I can do. And he was really happy. That one, but yeah, that was a guy who essentially I couldn't do anything for, but I just wanted to stay on his radar. And I just wanted to prove to him, like, listen, man, I'll work my butt off for you. And there's no two ways about it. So he kept on giving me the opportunities because I would call him. And for me, I was like just trying to prove a point, like, I will get the business for you eventually. And that's what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, is like these phone calls and connections you're making today can lead to a closing in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, sometimes 2 years from now. That's why you have to have a lot of irons in the fire,
right,
as a BDO. So, okay.
Yeah.
So you finished the year 30 million in production, and that wasn't even a full year. And looking back on that year, what lessons did you learn?
Man, I hit my head an awful lot. An awful lot. I mean, I think I learned that, to be successful, right, you got to execute. You're always on that, right? That's like that's like Ray Drew 101 stuff, like execution, execution, execution. What I learned was year one was just to figure out, what I do and what I don't do, what our box is, what it isn't, what kind of opportunities, and to pass on more paper, like in the beginning, I think I was like kind of trying to fill that pipe and get through the motions and, learn the process. And I wanted to get some live ammo with that. But as the year went on, I realized to pass on opportunities that really didn't make sense, to not try to push too hard, on something that really didn't make sense. And also, how to avoid landmines that we uncover in like closing, like upfront. That's a really big deal. I do a lot of self-storage. That's a niche that I've been very successful in. Those opportunities are great, but do we have a survey? Do we need one? Ordering third-party reports up front, tracking equity. Like, those are all things that you can do way early in the process when you know that the deal is going to get approved anyway. So why not keep the borrower engaged in the process and do like pre-close stuff up front? So by the time we get here, we've already got a lot of it done, and that was big. I learned that about halfway through the year. I wish I would have known that in the beginning, but that's part of the deal, right? You hit your head and you hit your head and you hope you don't do it the same way twice. Those were my biggest takeaways from year one.
I mean, you touched on something. I mean, you've said it a few times, which is like knowing your box.
Right.
So you know your box.
Yeah.
You know LTVs, you know LTCs, you know industry restrictions, and so then a deal comes from a broker. You've been trying to get the business from the broker, but it comes on your desk. Now I agree with you. If you can't do it, or it's going to be an uphill battle and a bad experience, I pass. But there's kind of a line and a balance. But when you do have to pass, on a broker that's finally giving you a shot, just because it happens to be outside your box, like how do you feel about that? What do you feel like the broker is going to not want to send you any more business because of this, or no?
No, I don't think so, because I don't earn those relationships as a commodity. It's my value add is I speak fluent brokerese. I mean, that's my value add. So when I can be real and just be like, listen, man, that's just not something we're doing, I still get at bats because I tell them right away. The other thing is I always try to get questions or a term sheet out in 48 hours. That's huge. When I was a broker, the worst thing was waiting around. And then the BDO would tell me, hey, Alan, you still don't know what you're doing. Get lost. and that stung, because you never get that week back. If I had got the fast no is obviously not as good as a yes, but it's a lot better than a slow one. So, yeah, I mean, when that happens, it stinks, of course, especially when it's a relationship I've been courting. And, I also prospect direct to borrower. I still do that sometimes, and you get someone in and then you have to say, hey, Mr. Jones, I had to walk you through in 1919 and all this other stuff. And by the way, that pesky open bankruptcy from 2 years ago you forgot to bring up actually came to light. And that doesn't work either.
Yeah, because you do a lot direct to borrower.
Yeah, I try to leverage, so we are, lending in all 50, that just, you guys too. But when I can get an opportunity kind of local, I really enjoy it because I really like to get to sit with the folks face to face. So that's something that I do, and I lean on our bank, network for that as well, and get those at bats. But yeah, I'm also just cold calling strangers and asking them if they want to borrow money. Sometimes they do, right?
So, well, that's so would you, I mean, that's a pretty unique way most BDOs will go to COIs, brokers, referral sources.
Easy, lazy. That's an easy job. It's easy. Look what we're talking about. Can somebody please gift wrap me a cash flowing deal with someone with great credit and just email it to me, and then I can take 2 days to decide if it's something I want to do. This is not a hard job. Oh, and by the way, if you do it, I'm going to pay you. You know what I mean? Like, we're in the position of power. It's crazy. I've got great Cigna with a young daughter. Like, where I'm from is so different, man. Like, this is not bad. Like, COI. And listen, if I told you that I wasn't courting every accountant I know, I'd be lying to you. Okay, I do it too. But I don't know. I don't know. I think that's weak.
All right. Well, you heard it here. Alan thinks you're weak if you're not.
If you're an armchair, listen. If you're an armchair producer doing like 8 a year riding a base, you're weak.
I agree with that. So you're coming off a $30 million year. Most people will have a little bit of a lull there, have to go out, build back up the pipeline. You seem to have continued to build and have now gotten to the next level. But how do you do that when you have a full pipeline, you have the closings, you have deals in underwriting, and then how did you still manage to put deals at the top of the funnel to continue that growth, even with all that stuff going on?
Well, I think you have to always be prospecting. And after the year I had, it was great. I was given an associate lender, right? His name is Kirill, and he's an absolute cannon. Like, honestly, he's very, very strong. So what's great is I have him to lean on as I continue to do this other stuff, because you have to, right? You have to get support at that level. But I think the thing too is, you just always have to be prospecting. That can never stop, and that's kind of like sales 101 stuff. But if you stop doing that, that's when you get those weird lulls. Like right now, I'm waiting on closing. Like around here, we say, well, they say it other places too, I suppose, but pipe don't pay. Until it closes, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. So a lot of it is kind of nurturing through that, and man, it's something that if you know I have it set up so like certain times of the week I do certain things, but every single morning I go right to my pipeline. I look at, okay, what's in closing, what needs to be addressed with this. Okay, then I go backwards. Okay, is there any underwriter questions or outstanding docs that I need to chase? And I try to chase docs I can, 48-hour loops for me works just fine. And then once I get caught up with the 180 emails that I have, I'm just prospecting, looking for more business.
That's a lot to do, but you have some help, you said? You have like an associate?
I don't like the term junior lender, because the dude's super sharp, has been in credit for like 4 or 5 years, speaks multiple languages. He's junior to me is that's he's an associate. I call him, but the way what he does is he's coming up into the origination and the sales side. So through osmosis, he's getting kind of soft skills that I have, right? At exchange, he's also assisting me with processing and keeping things moving. So if my eyes are off something, there's someone that's right there. He's copied on almost all of my emails, just to be safe. And that's been a game changer for us, man. And he's doing really, really well.
Well, that's a key, and that's common with a lot of top producers that I know, that they are able to delegate. I know BDOs that are they're such control freaks, and even at the closing, they're trying to run the closing, and they're trying to talk to the attorneys and get themselves right in the middle of things that, if they're in business development, I don't know why you would do that. There should be people in place that know how to do that, like the attorneys and the closing team and things like that. But that's another story. But like you're more in the camp of being able to delegate. How do you go about doing that?
Like I'm really big in the idea that you need to let people go to their strengths, right? If the entire team is a toolbox and I'm a hammer, I'm not going to waste my time trying to learn screwdriver skills when I can locate and identify someone that is better at the screwdriver and let them handle that while I handle the other stuff. The way I personally delegate is I know what he's good at and what his strengths are or whatever, and that's kind of it. I don't try to make people do stuff that doesn't make sense. And also being hands off to a point, it's okay too, because that's how the next generation comes up and learns, right? I mean, it's sharing that experience and is, in my opinion, it's very valuable to the org too, right? Because now you've got someone who's coming up, they're learning all this stuff. Let him go for it. Who cares? He's going to hit his head. Who cares? So did I. It's part of the deal. Oh, but what if you lose your broker? Who cares? Well, there's 100 of them. You know what I mean? There's 100 deals. And if you're open and you're honest, you let that development happen. $5 3 times is better than $10 once. So take care of your people. You know what I mean? And that's what I live by.
Well, and your bank is, which we are calling now Credit Bench, powered by First Home Bank, DBA, BayFirst.
We're actually just a symbol now. So it's like Prince. It's actually just a silhouette of Sterling Birdsong, and that's what we're going for now. No, we are Credit Bench powered by BayFirst Financial Corp, I think. Let me double check my email.
Let me know, yeah, because I got to get your intro right. So just like email it to me. So your bank is smart enough to know that and allow that, because not every bank will allow that. Like some banks want to use the BDO as a 6-in-1 tool, to use your analogy, and they just want to do everything. And obviously, you're capped out at a certain point if you do that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, we're still putting the hours in, but Ray, I'll be honest, like like last year, it was definitely a job for 2 people. I mean, honestly, it was sometimes it was a lot, man. And it's kind of good that they do it. I'm really fortunate, to be honest with you. It's something that I don't think my personal story, I don't think ever happens anywhere else with another group of folks in another team. From getting the at-bat from Tom and then getting the support of the senior guys, like, it's that whole thing, it doesn't happen anywhere else, and I'm just really grateful that it came together, because It's just, I feel very fortunate.
Well, and they're smart because for whatever reason, high producers like you are rare in our industry. And there's a lot of bankers, SBA lenders that have come up through banking, who I believe you called weak earlier in the podcast.
I didn't. I said, guys,
they struggle to do 10 million a year.
And they lead on COIs, and they don't pick up the phone after 5, and they're riding the base. Those people are weak. There's plenty of great folks that came up through banking and are what I would consider not.
Yeah. Well, yes, absolutely. 100%.
To be clear,
agreed. When you find someone like this, you want to pour resources. I mean, the bank should be smart enough to pour resources into them to grow that, because you're going to have to hire 9 more guys to try to find that next one. So why not just double down on the one you've already found? And I was going to ask you this, but I think I kind of know the answer now. So I'm going to answer it. But I was going to ask you, what is it about you that is basically 10xing, the average SBA producer who has the experience, quote unquote? And I think part of it is perspective, like where you come from.
Oh, yeah.
You've had it much harder as a broker, and you understand, and a business owner. I mean, you're your own business when you're a broker.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, approaching it from a place of like gratitude, as I say, I mean, that's sincere, I mean, of course it's hard at times, right? There's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a lot of moving parts. There's some stuff we can control, we can't control. But at the end of the day, man, I've had it a lot worse.
I think that sort of almost like a chip on your shoulder type vibe is common with a lot of high producers. And it's just one of those things where it's like you're thankful for your struggles, because without them, you might not have been as successful. We have questions from callers now. We took some questions earlier in the week and from some listeners, and I have Andrew from Missouri wants to know, what COIs do you think are most valuable? So in other words, what makes a COI like someone you really want to work with? And I'll also add on that, like what do COIs do that make you not want to work with them?
Okay, that's a great question. For me, I mean, the COIs that I've had the most success with have been strong business brokers that I know have relationships with direct competitors that are not Googling us, that I'm finding them. They're not low-hanging fruit. It's proving myself in the relationship. Specifically, business brokers have been very lucrative, obviously, right? We all love a good biz act with real estate. And the brokers I try to stay away from, sometimes it's unfortunate because of my perspective and where I'm from. I try to always be, responsive and polite, but there's a lot of brokers too that don't really have it together. And this, like last year was about figuring it out. This year is about protecting my time. And that's the big Chris Hackney thing, right? PYT, protect your time, protect your time, protect your time. And like, I've realized that some of those relationships, even though I like them personally as people, they're just not a good fit for what I'm trying to do. And those breakups sometimes are awkward.
Right. I agree. You protect your time because that's really the biggest resource you have.
And especially when things start rolling, Ray, it's like, I just don't have that luxury of 2 hours to kick around some, you know what I mean? It's and that personal connection with the broker, because I've been there, but I'm just like, man, I don't know. And I'll try to place them. I'll try to refer them to somebody else. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And it's natural as you grow, because when day one on the job, it's very hard to say no to anything when you're building a pipeline.
Yeah.
But once you get stuff going, and I would argue that you should honestly say no to things that are gonna just suck, be time sucks. But yeah, that's a very powerful thing that we've talked about in the podcast. It's just saying no.
In your story, you said in an episode when you talked about, you made a big jump when you just defined yourself as what you do and what you don't do, and passing on paper. That's when you were doing more real estate stuff, which I know isn't the case anymore. You do a variety. But when you were like, listen, I'm going to be a CRE guy, and that's what I'm going to do, and all of a sudden your numbers just exploded. And I think that I kind of took a little bit of that too and thought about it, like, who am I? What do I do? I can't do it. Just figure out, again, back to the box, right? But passing on paper has been one of the best things for my career so far.
I love the thought of my box getting smaller by my own choice. Like, so I think I'm actually going to delete a column from my quote unquote credit box here pretty soon and get even smaller and really just niche down even further.
That's awesome.
We have another question. Do you plan your activity? Do you like plan your day the day before, or do you structure your day or anything in terms of time management like that?
No, I don't, but I do have CRM. I do have HubSpot, and HubSpot has something called tasks. And that's awesome because it'll remind you to follow up. And sometimes I'll go through tasks and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. It's been 3 months since XYZ and kind of that. But every day it's hard because my pipeline's always evolving and changing, and the excitement of the day is not yet defined sometimes, so it's hard.
I think it's very hard to plan, but if you're building your pipeline and prospecting, it is good to block out 4 hours to call and don't take any distractions. But once you have the pipeline, like my biggest thing is one, if I have to review a deal, and like you said, 48 hours response, I try to do 24.
You try to do 20. Yeah.
And so so if you want 48, talk to Alan. But if you want 24, come to Ray.
I'll do it in 12.
I'll just be
Kirill.
on.
Let me call Kirill. Kirill.
I've taught.
Processing update. 8-hour turnaround.
So if I have to review a deal that's complex or something, or just even reviewing a deal, I like to do that first thing in the morning when my brain is fresh, and then I also like to do my strategy and planning on the weekends.
Right.
And then I just try not to get sucked into email multiple times a day.
You prospect in the morning before you open your email box, I think you said before, right?
If I'm prospecting, which I'm not always, now that I'm managing some BDOs, like I am really not prospecting. But if I was going to prospect, it would be my first, hour in the day would be my favorite hour to do it.
Because once the email opens, it's over,
Yep. So one more question for you. What is the most effective way to actually connect and engage with the COI?
The most effective way to make contact with them?
I'm trying to think, is that to make contact or to engage after you've already made contact? I guess to make the initial contact, we'll say. Like, how do you actually reach out?
I'll usually just call. Like, I still believe in the telephone, and I know that's not for everybody. Texting is definitely better, email would be probably third, but for me personally, my style is I'll just call out of the blue and mention something that I've seen them. LinkedIn is perfect for that. Oh, congratulations on, or like a business journal or a posting, or, some reason to give them a compliment. If it's someone that I'm really trying to get from, I will reach out and give them a compliment of some sort, and I won't ask for anything on the first touch. Hey, congratulations on this listing, man. That's awesome. That's it. and then it's like, now what? But I'm just kind of making that thing because, people like to feel good. But then you just follow up and say, hey, by the way, this is what I do. And, we've had success with this, but not that. And, if you ever see this, I'd like to talk to you about it. And that's kind of, that's usually the way it works. I usually prefer to be more social, though. I'm not, build that rapport, of course.
Yeah, so a softer approach. I mean, which to me, calling someone up for the first time they're ever seeing your name and asking for business, I don't know. It's tough. I don't know if that works.
No, I don't think it does either. I mean, as much as I love the persona
tenacity,
of the old school sales guy, because you also got to be on planet Earth in 2022, right? And for me, it's like just making that warm contact to get on their radar, because at the end of the day, everybody knows what we do. People do business with each other based on relationships, if they like you or not. They're not going to say, oh, but it's usually just very soft when I'm courting COI relationships, for sure. Yeah. And trade shows and conferences are awesome for that too, because you just get to know somebody and then you follow up like, hey man, that was great, and
that's different. Yeah, because then people are there to do the business.
They're there for action. Yeah.
Hey man, well, thank you for hopping on the podcast. We're going to put this out, and I think you're going to be a huge star.
I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your time and everything that you do for the community to pump out great information, because it keeps guys like me interested, informed, and kind of engaged in what's going on. So I appreciate being here quite sincerely.
Hey, 1 second. I'm getting a phone call.
Okay.
Hey, Chris.
Ray, Drew.
Hey, I'm live on the podcast with Alan. You're on speakerphone.
Hey.
Alan Peterson, the Alan Peterson.
Yeah, yeah, that's him.
Man, I'll tell you, it's an honor and a pleasure to work with Alan Peterson. I've never witnessed a more hard-working individual in my life. I think there's 2 or 3 of them. He's a heck of a guy.
Well, he certainly is. Now, we're wrapping up this podcast. I was just curious, is there anything we should be asking him? Any stories?
We should be asking him what does his license plate say currently? Should ask that.
Okay. All right, that's good. Let me work with that. Alan, what's your license plate?
P275.
P275. Okay. I thought it was going to be like SBA guy or something.
Well, prime plus 275 is where Full boat.
Oh, that is good.
I had to remind him how we price things around here, so he just put it on his license plate.
Chris, I thought your question would be, why are you on a podcast and not getting more deals in?
I don't think he can hear you because it's going in here.
Oh, okay.
But all right, thank you, man. Well, I appreciate this question. I'm gonna hang up now.
All right.
That's funny.
Well, there you have it. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it. I'm gonna let you go. Have a good rest of the day. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, awesome, Ray. Thanks again, man. Talk to you soon.
All right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode of The Art of SBA Lending. And if you have any feedback or suggestions, email me at ray@artofsba.com. Until next time, ta-ta.